All right. Hey, everyone. I'm here with Drew. Drew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
Yeah, no, we're happy to do this. Drew, we met we met through some good old online Web3 networking connections here, but excited to have you on the show. One of the things that struck me is really fascinating what you're up to with BlockBeam. Do you want to kind of just tell the audience like what's going on with BlockBeam? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'm Drew. I think the way me and Jimmy originally met, I went to a Chainlink meetup in Boston. He had a whole crowd of people around him after, very charismatic speaker, and I had to run, so I didn't get a chance to meet him there, but shot a LinkedIn message after. And being a Bentley, right, Jimmy, is where you went originally.
Yep.
Yeah, so had that original Boston school connection, and then yeah, have chatted off and on since. Yeah, so BlockBeam, what we're doing is we run accelerators as a service for Web3 ecosystems. What could kind of help you understand it more is maybe going back to the founding story. And I'm going to take you all the way back to a failed startup I had called Crib Launch. So Crib Launch was a business we were trying to create Uber for college rentals. If you've ever been in Boston, you know that you basically pay a month's rent for a broker's fee if you ever need to find rental housing around any of the schools. And you actually have a pretty terrible process to even get to that point where you get to spend thousands of dollars. So we basically tried to create this business. What we were trying to do is aggregate student demand on a really clean app that had all parts of the process automated. And it failed miserably. And so the reason it failed is we basically were just in the lab working on an idea for really weeks, trying to refine it, and then realized problems in the market that wouldn't even let us kind of do what we wanted to do that we could have figured out if we just went out and talked to people and actually validated the product that way. So that's really what BlockBeam is for. It's a space for entrepreneurs to learn from mentors in a specific ecosystem, validate ideas, get some help in finding product market fit, and then also have the Web3 native resources to build things out if it's a product that makes sense.
Yeah, I love it. And I think even going back to just the first the first piece here, right? Like maybe a bit of networking alpha for for the community, right? Like meeting people at real world events does actually work, and
Yeah.
sometimes maybe a combination of showing up in person and then continuing the conversation online, right? Like that's a good way to build these connections. So um, yeah, that's really cool. And one of the things that I was struck with BlockBeam is like you guys really dig into the ecosystem for like, let's say, I know one of your big partners is Algorand, and I think you have a unique perspective on like who their customers are and like what matters in terms of bootstrapping their ecosystem. I'm curious if you could kind of dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. So the way we look at it is a layer one, the customers are not going to be the end users of a crypto application or a DApp. The customers of a layer one blockchain are truly the entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about where should I build, where can I get the most support, you should actually just be talking to other entrepreneurs that can talk to, this is the sort of support I got from the foundation. This is how they helped me, get my business off the ground. And then, of course, the different technical aspects that might be key to your solution.
Yeah. And so one of the themes that's sprung up throughout a lot of our content, and part of how I even got my job in crypto too, is I didn't have experience. So I went out and created it, right? Like I went pretty far down the path of starting my own company. And I was surprised by how willing these ecosystems were to like hand out grants, right? Like DAO grants to help you build or connect you with other builders or mentors. And so I'm just curious, like, if someone listening here in the community is like, I want to get into Web3, I want to start building my own thing. I don't know where to start or get the support because all my friends are Web2 devs, right? Or whatever. Like, what's the opportunity space look like for them? Like, what's available? How do you take advantage of that?
For sure. So there's definitely still grants available. I think early on, in the bull run, there definitely was trust broken between, entrepreneurs and layer one foundations and kind of how freely grants were flowing. Which is why now what becomes really important is networking in that specific ecosystem to really show people, you're committed to a certain vision, you're going through the process of validating that there is demand around your product. And it kind of just goes back to what we were talking about before, Jimmy. Like you really need to get involved with the people. That's the key. And if you can do that, that goes a really long way for getting the resources that you need to take your business to the next level. But it really does come back to the people.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting too is like we get a lot of folks who are like, okay, I want to get into Web3, but I'm not technical. Like, are there jobs that I can do, right? And I'm a non-technical person, right? I work in marketing, and there's just so much need for these skill sets as well, right? Like having the skills to actually build the code of the product is, essential for for getting a product off the ground, but it's just a piece of the puzzle for getting adoption. And so I'm curious, like, what do you see in terms of like, can you break down the opportunity space of folks that you work with that are like non-technical versus technical, and like how folks can get involved in the different, like, depending on their skill set?
For sure. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like you are, a marketer by trade, if I'm not mistaken. So, tons of different functional roles that are available, across the board. Hiring's obviously slowed at this point, but at the same time, it's going to be the year of the application, right? I think people are realizing, infrastructure is obviously critically important, but when it comes to, building products that people would actually use, you need industry experience from specific verticals. And so I think that this is really going to be the year you see, real estate applications leveraging blockchain thrive. And you'll see people, from a traditional real estate background get hired into the industry and be vitally important to taking projects to the next level. And I think you'll see that across the board through a few different verticals.
Yeah, I mean, if we just game that out, right? So let's say you can say, "Hey, maybe a real estate agent who's interested in Web3, like comb the ecosystems for someone trying to build a real estate app," right? Like these, often the skill set of the person who can build the app, they lack that industry specific niche expertise, right? And if you can offer that, that's a great way for you to jumpstart your career there. I'm curious. So real estate's one. Like, I mean, there's probably, all these functional roles, whether it's like marketing, legal, sales, like would be another one, but any industry like, supply chain or whatever real world asset that you're an expert in, there's probably someone out there for you. Music. Curious, like, do you see any trends or like what's interesting right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in the tokenization of everything, right? Like, I think you even see big players like JP Morgan saying it. It's just a technology that makes sense. There's a lot of clear utility for putting assets on chain. So I see across the board sweep. I think, when I actually originally started looking at blockchain, one of the first things I kind of looked at was, could you apply this sort of fractional ownership model to billboards? I had some relations in that world and I thought it was interesting. The financial structure of those assets was extremely complex, so never ended up, really seriously pursuing it. But yeah, I think tokenization is going to be widespread. Just looking at the Algorand ecosystem as well, there's definitely a lot of, movement in art and music. So we have a few different projects built in our accelerator right now that are, trying to take down Ticketmaster, for, lack of a better phrase, or doing some really interesting things about how to creatives monetize.
Mm-hmm. So let's take a look back, right? You're in a really unique position where you help foster ecosystem growth, right? In sort of the heart of almost as close to bare metal infrastructure as you can in the blockchain world. So like you kind of have this bird's eye view, like what can you generalize about folks who are working in Web3? Like what are the skill sets that are unique that they have that maybe are uniquely valuable in Web3 or like didn't exist in Web2? Like what are the sort of things that are really valuable that people need to like put on their radar to learn or to hone?
I think something we're seeing with Web3 that is vitally important for business is just getting closer to customer, right? It's the idea of this community rather than a customer. Like, when we were starting BlockBeam and even still, we've got a whole community in our Discord who it's not just like we're providing them a product and it's a transactional relationship. We get to know like everything about a lot of things about these people and about what they're trying to succeed. And I think for us, it's really helped, figure out archetypes that we wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that community-based approach is something that just naturally comes to people in crypto and Web3. And I think is kind of a movement away from some roles in Web2, but I think that's always kind of been at the heart of product management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I was having a chat with a VC. He's really smart in this space. And at one point he's like, look, the two hardest jobs to hire for right now are Rust developers and community managers, right? which is like the total opposite side of the spectrum of from each other, right? One is highly technical and super niche new, programming languages. The other is like, can you can you make our community go, right? Can you manage all these people? Can you, do you have a vision of how we can create collective action from a Discord, right? I think that's a really astute point, right? Like this idea that community management, navigating the community, like that's a underdeveloped muscle, I think, for a lot of people who are not in Web3. And honestly, for people who are in it now, right? But the people who can harness community and know how to make it work for them are probably going to be really well positioned to succeed.
Sure. And just to expand on that, because you kind of made my brain go there, I think it's that idea of like it's blurred cultural lines. Like I remember in international business freshman year, we had a whole segment of the semester focused on rolling out a business in a different country and what you have to do from a cultural standpoint to be ready for that. Like you don't get to change your approach in crypto. You've got one community, it spans the world, and you have to be consistent with how you are treating your people. And really, I think it's just what we'll continue to see across every industry. Like we are one world here when it comes to crypto.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, the online world doesn't have the same borders that we draw on a map, right? Okay, so then I think there's two pieces that I'd like to dig into as we sort of wrap here. The first being, if you're someone who wants to jumpstart their career in crypto, maybe you're in Web2, or maybe you're one of these, like you're a real estate agent or some expertise in a field and want to like make the leap. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think it comes back to showcasing that you're a problem solver. Especially where the space is right now. No one's looking to hire someone who can, just do a job, like simply. People are looking at people that can grow with the company, grow with the space, and more than anything, can be counted on to solve problems. I think if you're just getting started, then obviously like you need a base level knowledge of everything that's going on. But to be honest with you, like the ecosystem is so wide that even people who are currently working within Web3 do not know every single aspect of Web3 across every single vertical. That's never what's expected. It's about knowing your piece well, knowing the fundamentals, and showing that you can solve problems.
Yeah, and I think what we'll have to do is we'll link to some of these resources, and I'd like to get maybe your top 3 of like, hey, I'm new. What do I need to read or watch to get up to speed, right? Like, should probably know the difference between like proof of work and proof of stake, and foundational things about like decentralized consensus. But you bring up a good point, right? Like, because if you're in NFTs, you might not need to know a whole lot about DeFi, right? Or maybe you do because they're convergent. The world is just expanding so fast. You can't be a master of everything, right? You can't be the Renaissance man anymore in crypto because the world is too vast. So then the final piece that I would have for you then is, well, okay, so someone's made the leap and they've maybe been working in the space for a year or two. What have you seen be really successful accelerants of people's career, right? Like how are people, the successful people that you've seen move up and create things and all that sort of stuff? Like what are the commonalities that you've observed?
Yeah, I think the biggest singular one is build in public. So I think people have gotten this for a while now, but it's been rephrased in a lot of different ways, and I've seen it a lot more recently. But it's just kind of the idea of how do you showcase yourself online and get people behind what you're working on. It's an extremely powerful thing. And people that, have kind of dedicated themselves to taking that approach, and definitely to varying levels. There's people like you, Jimmy, you're making a podcast. I think this is going to be, a great rallying cry for people. And then there's even people that are just sharing their thoughts about specific projects online. But I think you definitely see a trend in terms of how quickly people are accelerating in their roles and a commitment to that sort of approach. I will give the disclaimer, of course, I'm sure there's, operations role and developers roles that's just completely irrelevant. But just from my vantage point, that's what I'm seeing.
That's right. There is a tremendous open source ethos in the Web3 world, and being able to build in public is opens yourself up to a lot of new challenges that, if you just had like a private repo doesn't. And so navigating that, like educating yourself on how to navigate that and take advantage of it, and like have the community propel you rather than bog you down with requests and asks and sort of low productivity uses of your time is a skill set that I think a lot of folks are struggling to master. And I suspect you're right that the ones who do are going to be really well off going forward, whether it's your technical role or if you're building something like a coordination of a community as well. So, Drew, last piece here for you would be give us a little plug about BlockBeam. Like, if someone wants to learn more, wants to dig in, like, where are we going? What should we be on the lookout for?
So visit us at blockbeam.io. There you'll find a way to get onto our platform, get started button, and we host, live events, pretty frequently with different big players in the space. In terms of getting involved, we currently are running our first Gateway to Algorand program of the year. We have 62 participants, 20 teams working right now. They're working towards a final pitch to Algorand-based VCs and accelerators, and making some really significant progress on their ideas. We'll be running another one at the start of April. So if anyone is, currently working on a project, you're definitely a good fit. If you, actually are just wanting to get involved with the space and don't have an idea yet, but would like to hop on one of these early teams and just, kind of showcase problem solving, there could be a spot for you as well. So definitely come to blockbeam.io, check out what we have, and, hope to see you in a program.
Wonderful. Well, Drew, thanks for the time. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jimmy.